Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast. It is what we just alluded to before the break. Yesterday, as we were getting all of these free agency details coming out, we also got the news that the Boston Celtics ownership group, led by Wyc Grousbeck, who has been the governor of the team since 2002, is planning on selling their share in the Boston Celtics. So this is definitely came as a surprise to me. The process is going to begin either later this year or in early 2025. There is a timeline put in place according to the statement that the ownership group put out in terms of the fact that Wyc Grousbeck is going to remain the governor of the Celtics until 2028. Now, Wyc led this purchasing of the Boston Celtics in 2002. They bought it for $360 million. As Kelsey in the comment section right now on YouTube here is asking, is Wyc Grousbeck broke? Well, if he were to be at this very moment, which I don't think is the case, that's going to come to an end very quick, because after being a part of this buy in 2002 for $360 million, Forbes estimates the Celtics franchise value to be at $4.7 billion. Now, Forbes, they put out this article every single year, so that was headed into the 2023-24 season prior to them winning the championship, so we could even see maybe that value be a little bit higher. Sportico estimates it to be at $5.12 billion, I believe it is. So, one way or another, Grousbeck and this investment group is going to make their money back and a lot more since then. Yes, you heard that right. $4.7 billion according to Forbes. So it is really crazy, and it's interesting considering the fact that during this offseason, we have seen a lot of these franchises sort of tiptoeing around the luxury tax and trying not to step into those first and second aprons where the bill comes back. Especially there's a repeaters tax and such, where if you spend a number of years in the luxury tax, that you are going to get hit hard with the bill. And there is a very large bill on the way where, according to WEEI, Boston-based radio network, they had a report that the luxury tax bill for the 2025-26 season, so, a year from this upcoming season, the luxury tax bill is estimated to be at $250 million. So that is a lot to take on, and for that reason, we see the ownership group trying to sort of move their way out of having to pay this consistent massive bill. And it's the expensive roster that the Celtics have put together. They haven't been scared to, make moves. And again, listen, I know the Celtics aren't the most popular franchise according to, the national consensus, but something that, as a sports fan myself, I always root for is ownership groups that are willing to spend. I want them to succeed, because it almost is a statement to the rest of the league of, this is how you put together a championship. And I thought that the Texas Rangers winning the 2023 World Series was a nice example of that. And now the Celtics in 2024, we're seeing the results of spending big actually paying off. But some of that big spending for the Celtics includes a couple of deals that they made just yesterday as well that I want to briefly touch on as we talk about the finances of the situation surrounding the Boston Celtics. Jason Tatum became the highest paid player in NBA history with a 5-year, $314 million contract extension. Like I mentioned, highest paid in NBA history. He's going to be the first ever player in NBA history, I believe, to make $70 million in a single season, which is what it's going to be in his final year. Now he has a player option there. Sure, even if he opts out of it, the Celtics are going to, give him another deal, which is probably even more money there. So I recorded a short on this yesterday. I don't want to dive into it too long. This was a no-brainer in my eyes for the Celtics to give out this type of contract to Jason Tatum, who is entering his prime. I do still feel like there is, parts around his game that he could clean up a little bit to elevate his game even further, and he just delivered a championship, so there was really no question about it. And I would say for the most part, there was no question about them giving Derek White this contract extension as well, where it was a 4-year deal worth $126 million, so that's another one where, over $30 million sounds like a lot, and it definitely is a lot. But at the same time, you're talking about a starting caliber player on a championship team. He just showed it last year, and we're seeing all of these massive contracts being handed out that you can make an argument this could end up looking like a bargain. Now, ultimately, I think it's a fair price, but, there are a couple different ways to look at it. And we do have a couple comments here from Eric Rodriguez of our own GSMC Sports Network. He said, Joe Mazzulla for president. Boston's success is all about building team chemistry instead of constantly trading for players trying to force success, such as the Clippers, Suns, Lakers, and now Philly. I agree. I think the team construction of this has been absolutely phenomenal. And you definitely have to credit the ownership as well, that this isn't possible because of Kelsey. I wish we were signing those types of contracts here at GSMC, but maybe someday. But to, Eric's point, it's not possible if not for the ownership group being willing to, invest into the organization in this way. And it has been tremendous to see the way that the team was able to develop under Joe Mazzulla and seeing the chemistry really form over the past couple years. Anytime you got any of those top 6 players for the Celtics in a press conference, they were talking about the idea of sacrificing for one another for the ultimate goal, which they ended up getting done. So it was just put together in the right way in my eyes. But this does lead to a point where, especially with a new ownership group coming in, you can't expect them to be able, it's not sustainable to have a roster this expensive for this long. Now, for a couple years, the Celtics can get away with being in this second apron because of the fact that they already have all of their top guys under contract and some of their bench players as well that you can sort of throw into the rotation. And they've done just an excellent job top to bottom with this organization really ever since, again, Wyc Grousbeck in, his route to winning 2 NBA championships since he took over the team. Done an excellent job, I feel like, with personnel in terms of general managers, Danny Ainge and Brad Stevens. A pretty terrific lineup there. A number of excellent coaches as well that have helped the Celtics get to this point. And it's going to be probably a little bit worrisome for Celtics fans to some degree, because ownership is, I think it's one of the most underrated things in sports, because a franchise can just be put in purgatory if they have a bad ownership group that isn't willing to invest or chooses to be overly hands-on. That's why I think what's been so great about Grousbeck is he's spent the money when he's needed to. He has understood his role, that it does not include being so hands-on with the organization. So feels like the Celtics are in this point where what they have on the books for the next number of years is a recipe to potentially be a dynasty. But it's still a conversation, especially now with whatever this next ownership group is going to look like. Now, one of the co-managing partners of Groesbeck, it's Steve Pagliuca or something. I apologize for the mispronunciation there if I got it wrong there, but he has been alongside Wick through the entirety of his purchasing of the franchise, and he released a statement where he's going to be participating in the bidding process for Wick's portion, so that could be a potential good sign. You know, when Groesbeck was taking over the Celtics organization, part of the big thing for him was that he is a fan of the Celtics, and he wants to see them succeed just as much as he wants to see himself succeed. So that type of a mindset, if the Celtics could replicate that, would be great. But it still probably would lead to a situation where the next ownership group is probably going to have to make some moves that isn't incredibly, you know, inducive of winning basketball games. And what I mean by that is the fact that they are probably going to have to cut some costs at some point along the way to get under the luxury tax. And that could mean sending off, you know, a fan favorite or two along the way, as the Celtics' top end of their roster is so expensive that they're going to be able to get away with it for another season or two. And I wouldn't say that their window is coming to an end by any means, but it is something to take into consideration when you're talking about this Celtics team that a lot of people have gotten very excited on in terms of how many championships could this group end up winning. So I think it's funny to some degree also that Groesbeck built up this super team, spent all this money, got all this money on the books for years to come, and is going to walk away from the table before he has to fully pay off all of those debts. You know, he got everything that he wanted in this transaction, and it was Banner 18. That was really the priority for him. He comes away with it. And now there are going to have to be people stepping into a very passionate sports city and try to explain why this model that they have is not sustainable for, you know, years on end. So I think the big thing for Boston fans is just anybody but John Henry and the Fenway Sports Group buying the team. There's, of course, the, you know, screenshot about the fact that the Fenway Sports Group is interested in buying a basketball team someday. And, you know, if you are from Boston, you understand the discontent that there is between Red Sox fans and the Fenway Sports Group for their lack of investment. So that's pretty much worst case scenario there for Boston fans. But again, a lot to sort of iron out there, and we will have to see over time. But want to reorient back into free agency here, as today has definitely been quieter. A lot of the big names were moved yesterday, but there are still some impactful players that are on the open market for teams to pick up. So we're going to be diving into a list of the top players that could be contributing players next year. But before we do so, we're going to take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back.